Hi, welcome to the channel. In this video, I want to talk about age gap relationships. Um, as we all know, in the case of Gene Hackman and Betsy Hackman, we're talking about Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman, who just passed away more than a month ago, and that you know things it was a dramatic ending, it was a tragic ending, and of course how does an age gap relationship that it was working at the beginning of the marriage, but how everything turned out to be as the time went by, as the age, as he was aging and she was of course she was not getting younger either. Sometimes we would think that oh well, a person is this year, this amount has gone by, this many years has gone by, and we think that only one group of person are aging. Of course, being a celebrity, and a name like Gene Hackman, of course, many millions of people were following him, his whereabouts, his whatever he did, good or bad, of course, his movies. And they had a 33 years age gap. And what does it mean for a couple, for both, right? Both were American couples, uh, an American couple who lived, in their last years in Santa Fe area, New Mexico, in the state of New Mexico. Now, in other countries, in like Philippines, Southeast Asia, Latin America, age gap relationship are common, are very much common, and society kind of accepts. Nobody really, especially if the person, the man, the male part, the male is wealthy. I mean, it's acceptable. People see it normal. If somebody is if the man is 70 years old and the lady, the wife is 30, 25. In the Philippines, most expats, among those over 600,000 expats from Western countries, especially from U.S., right, the United States, in the Philippines, 85 to 95% of the men that went to live in the Philippines, they've been, they found the second wife. They found the loved one that they were looking for, of course, because most men going to the Philippines, they're going to look for a bride, to look for a girlfriend, and age gap is very common among those men. I mean, like I said before, it's 85 to 90% of men marrying a Filipina woman. There are at least 30, 35 years age gap, age of difference. Let's say that the man, the American or the Canadian, Western, any Western who married in the Philippines is 65, 70. The lady, the wife, the bride is around 25, 30, and it's very common. People see that in socially very normal in the Philippines and Asia in general. I mean, Southeast Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia, Latin America too. Central America is very common to see a age gap, couples with a lot of age, difference, with many years of difference. By saying that, but in Western countries like in the United States, where Gene and Betsy lived, like in the United States, in the state of New Mexico, age gap is not very common. I would say less than 20% of couples in the U.S., less than 20% has some age gap, and these are not big, huge. It could be 15 years, 20 years, 15 to 20 years. That's considered big age gap. And in the Philippines, like in the previous video, I was telling you about the case of Mark Thornton and wife Jean in the Philippines, right? In Dumaguete, they had a 43 years age gap, and they were happy until the end. I mean, they married, they had a child, and they were all, happily ever after, until death, until he passed away. He had a heart attack, passed away, and that was the end of it. But talking about what does the age gap means in the care of the elderly. I mean, in one of the, of course, the aging spouse is gonna age faster. They're both aging. I mean, they're both, time goes by, and it's for both. both getting older. When Betsy, Gene Hackman's wife was 35 when they married, right? Actually, was 33 when they married, and Gene Hackman was already 65. I mean, 60, actually 64, and when they were married, I mean, of course, he was in his prime time. He was already an Oscar-winning celebrity. He was traveling the globe. I mean, trotting the globe, walking the red carpet, getting awards. I mean, parties. I mean, all kinds of. He was, revered, adored. I mean, very well. I mean, he will visit England, and the kingdom, the prince of, the Prince of Wales will welcome him at the palace anywhere he went. In the States, of course, Hollywood, the president, the president of the state, the United States. I mean, he was a guest, important guest. He was a special guest almost anywhere he went, just like other celebrated, movie legends like Clint Eastwood and other many, right? Other many actors and actresses. But talking about this the particular issue of age gap within celebrities. I mean, celebrities in Hollywood usually, let's say Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie, and many others. There is not that much of age gap because they are both power couple. They are both celebrated. I mean, celebrated artists. I mean, they're both award-winning. They're both like there is a power struggle when you have two big celebrities like Brad Pitt or Angelina Jolie or Bruce Willis and the first wife of Bruce Willis. Remember that this girl that played that she's a very famous star. I can't recall the name right at this moment, but Bruce Willis's first wife. Of course, they didn't have that much of age gap. But there is a power struggle when they are both equally famous, both equally rich. When they are both both couples, both the spouse and the significant other. They're both very famous celebrities, wealthy, and they can be a power struggle. There's even jealousy in a couple. They seem to be love each other. They seem to be in love, and those relationship works one in 10,000, one in 100,000. I mean, you name it. But it's very rare to see, power couples like I was mentioning before, at the same age level, very much with 2 or 3, 5 years different, which is not that much really, and where they're both wealthy, super rich, wealthy, filthy rich, I would say, just like Beyonce and the other guy who's super wealthy also. I mean, there's always things that can explode at any time. At any time, things can go south. I mean, things can go. Those are very explosive relationships. But let's say when we recall that Gene Hackman was married to his first wife, which they had three children. There was not that much of age difference. There was not that much. They had 3 children, but they parts way they divorced. Right? They divorced. It didn't work out. So, of course, Gene Hackman found his true love. He said his true, love in Betsy, and they had a 33 years old difference. But Betsy was, of course, she was a celebrated pianist. I mean, she was on her own an artist, but she was not even that level of celebrity. That level of power, that level of wealthiness. I mean, she wasn't that rich like him. I mean, he was the guy with the money, right? So, in that case, of course, Gene Hackman was looking for somebody who can really relate to, who can really understand his job. Because one of his complaints in his first marriage, one of the argument that one of the things that he said after divorcing his first wife is that it was hard. It was so hard being that famous, being where he was at that moment in his career, to have for a wife to support that. I mean, to basically be able to blend with that kind of pressure. I mean, the social pressure, the industry pressure. I mean, Of course, the pressure of moving from one place to another one. He has to go film in Asia, in Japan. If the movie was in Japan, his wife would stay in America, in the U.S., in mainland USA, mainland in the United States. I mean, he had to travel so much. You know, he was working hard. He was working a lot, and of course, the separation couldn't stand the marriage. But they still had three children, and there was not that much of age gap. But with Betsy, he found love, true love. He found peace. Of course, he found somebody who was really patient. He he can really understand what he was going through. Who can really be that that shoulder that he was looking for. That he needed that shoulder to lean on, just like everybody else, just like all of us. I mean, I think we're trying to lean on to that person that can really understand what we're going through. And for the female, for the girl, is the same. I mean, she wants that kind of shoulder that can hold her, that can that can hold her hand, that can hold her, that she needs. Most girls, that's what they were looking for in a marriage. But having 33 years of difference with Betsy, that was it was shocking for many people. For many people, it was shocking that he couldn't find. I mean, there were more, beautiful celebrities at the time. Although 33 years ago, on those years, we're talking about the 1980s, early 1980s when he divorced his first wife. But now that of course he was looking for that other person, and he never thought that he will find somebody like Betsy. She was an artist, a pianist, but she wasn't that celebrity, in the limelight of Hollywood, going from party to party. I mean, the Hollywood life. And so, of course, Gene Hackman was looking for that kind of relationship where he can find peace, he can find somebody who can have, those endless conversations, endless nights conversation where she can really, and she found love too in Gene Hackman. She really found, and she was very young, beautiful at 33 years old, and of course, but that things, as the years went by, things changed. I mean, things evolved, things changed, and I'm not saying that she wasn't in love that much. I mean, that love was gone. I think it's true. I mean, I agree with looking into her life. I mean, Betsy's Betsy's life, and also Gene Hackman's life. Of course, the love was stronger. I mean, it was it was in magazines, in talk show hosts, in talk show events that those were the Gene Hackman, his new wife, that lasted so long when they were celebrating 20 years anniversary, 25 anniversary. There were very few Hollywood couples that we can count with our fingers. How famous couples in Hollywood that were still married at that time, that lasted so long, 20 years. I mean, it's a miracle in Hollywood, a power couple in Hollywood to last more than 20 years. So it was it was like a gem. I mean, it was a good example. It was a role model for other actresses and famous in Hollywood and New York and the planet basically. But they choose to live in quiet state in Santa Fe, New Mexico area for years now. I mean, they found through the movie. I mean, he was filming one of his movies in Santa Fe area, and he found the landscape. He found the culture. The New Mexican culture is very much. It's not like the New York culture. New York culture is different. LA culture, South Miami culture is very much different than New Mexican culture. I want to tell you about that in a minute. New York culture is a fast-moving culture. New York City culture, of course, it's a type of Hollywood. It's very much that celebrities go from party to party. I mean, it's a every night party for celebrities. Big fashion events, big movie events, theater, Broadway. I mean, Broadway, theater works every night, and all of these celebrities, they go Broadway, they go to, and weekend to the Hamptons. Yeah, the elite go to the Hamptons, and they continue. There's a saying in New York City that they start partying from Monday through Thursday, and including Friday, part of Friday in the city, and they moved the party to the Hamptons by private helicopters, and of course the elite. That's where they meet. The elite. You talk about Billy Joel, Paul McCartney. Now that's one of the hiding place in the Hamptons. I mean, one of his, all these celebrities, and of course, that kind of lifestyle was not a lifestyle for Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa, and that's how we found the quietness in New Mexico, in the state of New Mexico, and this has to do with what happened in the last few years. There is an issue of control now in an age gap relationship like that. In the Philippines, it's very common to have 35, 40 years age gap. Now, who controls who? The idea that she was very controlling during the last years, and how they ended up isolating themselves from society, from their children, from the family members, and does that have to do with controlling? Because the issue of control comes in age gap relationships. Typically, usually the age gap relationship brings a control, but who's controlling who? I mean, who started the controlling issue in a relationship? In a regular relationship, of course, the man is, in equal, very much equal relationship, equal age relationship, and equal standing, equal social, equal wealth marriages. If they are both, blue collar workers, blue collar marriages, and not wealthy, there's few, they both can work. They both work. They both have, they both work 40 to 50 hours a week, and they both bring food to the table, pay insurance. All the costs. But in a case of Gene Hackman and Betsy, in the case we're talking about, it's been said. It's been described as a controlling relationship. But who was controlling who? Most likely, Gene Hackman had very much, his personality was controlling personality also. Of course, on the movie set, he was very much, in charge of many of the most directors, most producers. They had to stick with it. Having a star, of course, in the contract, they have to sign a contract to start these big time movies, and there was clauses, and they had to do what he was asking them to do, basically. So that's a controlling relationship, but that's a working relationship. But in a marriage relationship that he had with Betsy, at first he was the one controlling her. At first, right, for years, but as he was aging. And she was aging too. She wasn't, she was only 35, 33 when they married. But of course he was getting weaker. When he arrived to be 75, 80, of course he needed help. He needed more help from her that she needed help from him. Of course they were sharing, the asset and assets and his bank account was very much okay. Of course, he had to give alimony to the first wife and children, of course, for many, many years, but they were still okay. They were still okay. They had plenty to live with. They have the rest of their lives were taken care of. And of course, Betsy was known to be controlling in the last few years. And how this situation ended up at the very end, that in such a way that even the children, Gene Hackman's older, adult children, they lived in California, and others, and one of the boy, I think, they live in a different state, but the girl, an older adult, living in California. They were having a hard time to get in touch with his dad, the father, Gene Hackman, and they relate to the situation by saying, well, sometime we called, the last time that they had in contact with the father was October, which months, like 3 months ago, that in which and the complaint was that she was so controlling. Everywhere they went, she was in charge of the situation. She was in charge of almost everything. Being 95 is not easy, right? most likely she took care of business. Most of the business part, I mean, taking care of bills, paying bills. I mean, he had Alzheimer's in the last few years. So, and there was not much of that we expect from him to do it for his daily activities, like getting shower and simple as that, getting dinner, breakfast, and all kind, activities of daily living was Betsy was in charge of every much almost 100% of his activities of daily living, everything that he needed for his daily care, medication, food. I mean, getting shower, getting clean, getting to appointments. She took care of everything. But in situations like this, when see what happens, how they ended up dead, both dead, and nobody knew for weeks. What if they had? New Mexico State has guardianship, programs that works for couples like that too. Not just for a person who doesn't have anybody to take care of the person, right? If the person is in a vulnerable person that doesn't have anybody to care, of course. But what about shared, that they can share guardianship? Shared guardianship means that, of course, if the wife is present, the wife officially the wife is the guardian, right? But the program in Mexico allows in a way that, if possible, right, if the petitioner, if they have a petition, that they can share the guardianship with a medical somebody, a medical professional who can take care of, who can help out. So that's a sharing guardianship. So in the state of New Mexico, there's restrictions, of course, in the guardianship program, but they allow. And if there is a public funding for people who qualify for public funding, of course, people who are not able to pay their own, their own care, their own guardianship, their own guardian. The state of New Mexico allows public funding approved by the state legislature to pay for that, those expenses, of course, which not every state have. For instance, New York State doesn't have public funding. It doesn't have statewide public funding for everyone, who needs that guardianship. But in this case, what if there was a shared guardianship? Shared meaning that Betsy could have shared guardianship with a medical professional that was able to be every 2 days at least, if it's not every day, being at home, taking care of business, medical decisions, including medical decisions. But this is done, approved by the court. But if the petitioner could have been either Betsy, the wife, or it could have been one of the children. But there is nothing in file that says that one of the children was petitioning, a shared guardianship. We're not talking about 20 years ago. We're talking about at least the last 5 years when Gene Hackman was declining. His illnesses, his disease, his situation, his Alzheimer, was declining, in his last few years. There was a possibility. There was always a chance that they could have filed a motion. They could have filed in state court in New Mexico. In this case, in New Mexico, is the district court that takes care of guardianship, issues in the state of New Mexico, the district court. So, but there was no petition. There was no petition from Gene Hackman's adult children, and there was no petition from Betsy herself about sharing guardianship. Sharing guardianship could have worked, and they had assets. This is not an issue that they couldn't pay. They couldn't pay. This is not an issue that they couldn't pay. That Betsy, they didn't have assets. They have, and it's been known that the inheritance of the couple is around $80 million, and they're already talking about where everything is going to go now. They're already in the news. There's already in the news media about where it's going to go now. Where it's going to go those $80 million. What about that chunk of that $80 million? A little chunk, not even that much. Maybe a couple $1 million to pay for guardianship, for a sharing guardianship, that Betsy could have 50% guardianship, legal guardianship, and another 50%, or even 30 or 40% of decision making for a medical professional, or not just a if it's not a medical professional, it could have been one of the children with a relative, respecting that the first wife have three children. What of those three children that older adults? They could have taken one of those children could have moved to Santa Fe. They didn't have to live in the same house. If Betsy didn't want them to live in the same house with her, but what about living in the Santa Fe area, in New Mexico's area, Santa Fe, in the nearby vicinity, and they can share that guardianship? That's not being selfish. That's But if the person is so selfish that she wanted to control everything in Gene Hackman's life, including medical care, medical appointment, everything, So, in a way, they had allowed the situation developing with their lives, isolating themselves from society, even from, what was the best interest for Gene Hackman, because he was the one who needed more help than her. Of course, she needed help too. I'm not blaming her for anything. I'm just saying that there was options. There were, options like sharing guardianship. In this case, in the case of Jean and Betsy, they could have done that. But what about the children? What about the relative of Jean Hackman's brothers or relative who could have fun? Because in the New Mexico system, anybody can file a motion. They can file petition to the judge, to the circuit, district court judge, petitioning, but there is nothing in file, petitioning to share guardianship. But because why is that? Because they have concern about if they had concern, real concern about Gene Hackman's illness, his situation in his later years. His last years, especially knowing what happened to him. Sadly, what happened. That we all know what happened to him in his tragic end. But there was no issue, of any petition taking place in this, in the district of Santa Fe, New Mexico. So, this issue, hopefully, of sharing guardianship, like in what's going on with Wendy Williams in New York. In fact, the court in New Mexico, in New York, was trying to reach out to the relatives in Florida. Wendy Williams, this talk show host that has been, in the focus of the media attention in the last few years, that she wants to get rid of the guardian she has. That she's complaining about the judge too. She's complaining about the guardian that she said that she wanna really get her off her neck. It's a suffocating situation she's living through. But what about sharing guardianship? The judge in that case, in the New York case with Wendy Williams, was trying to. They did try to reach out to the family members in Florida. Even one of the brothers. Wendy Williams' brother was for a couple of times that he was contacted to be part of this process, because the process takes time. It takes a few months. It's not a one day decision that the judge makes. It's a process that can take 4 to 6 months at least to make a decision for a judge to appoint a guardian for a person. For anybody, not just Wendy Williams, but for anybody who needs a guardian. So it takes a process. So what the Wendy Williams' brother was saying is that he was trying to, that when he was contacted, the process was almost in the middle of it. It was halfway through. In a process that takes 4 to 6 months to develop. Of course, for him to move airplane ticket to New York City, a hotel, who was going to pay for that? She was the one who was wealthy. She was the one with the millions of dollars in the bank, but the brother, not the brother. The brother or the relative who lives in Florida, they're not the wealthy people. She's the one who's wealthy, right? But he said, well, if I have to leave my job, that now he had to get permission from his workplace and expenses airplane tickets and going to 4, 5, 6 times to these, hearings in New York City. That takes time, takes money, of course. And his complaint was that the big question was why one of the relatives of one of Wendy Williams' relative was not the guardian instead of being somebody else, a total stranger, right? A total stranger. But the trend in New York, right? In the New York system, the New York guardian system is that the judge appoints professionals. The judge, they tend to appoint professionals in this field, professionals who can who know what they're doing, who can take care of, who can do management for assets management. They do business, they do the banking part of it. They make decisions, medical decisions, and of course they take care of the day-to-day, life of the person who they are gardening and they are protecting. Basically, a guardian is a protector. A guardian is somebody who protects, who takes care of, who's basically making everyday decision for the person you is taking care of. So, in the New York, if you compare those two cases, there was more chance for a Gene Hackman to have a sharing, guardianship. Being the only guardian was Betsy, but there was a chance that a second person could have the guardian, and that second person could have been at the house at the moment that the event took place, when Betsy collapsed and died a few hours later, and then 7 days later, Gene Hackman passed away too. He collapsed. He had a heart, of course, issues, and of course Alzheimer's issues, Alzheimer's disease that doesn't have no cure. So in this case, it did require a sharing guardianship. It didn't happen, but there is an issue that is still under investigation. How can nobody file for a petition to have that shared guardianship in the case of Gene Hackman and Betsy? So thanks for watching, and thanks for all your time, and we'll see you in the next video. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and give us a hands up if you like the content, and see you in the next video. Take care, guys, and God bless you all. Take care. Bye bye.